You know how some stories just never seem to fade away?
Yeah, like they got this like magnetic pull or something.
Exactly. And I think that's definitely the case with the whole Tupac Shakur thing.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, even after all these years, I mean, it was what, 96?
Right.
It still gets people talking.
Yeah.
And it still gets people theorizing. And it's just crazy.
And you know what's wild? It continues to feel both historic, like it's this moment frozen in time, but also like weirdly relevant to stuff that's happening right now, you know?
Right. And we're going to try to kind of figure out why that is.
Right.
But for people who maybe need a little refresher,
Yeah.
It's 1996 Las Vegas. You've got this whole East Coast, West Coast rap rivalry thing going on. It's like at its peak.
Oh, yeah. It's intense.
And Tupac right in the middle of it all. And then boom, it all ends so violently and so suddenly.
It's like a tragic turning point in a lot of ways.
So we're going to look at like 10 key facts about the case.
Okay.
But we're also going to try to figure out, as we said, why this story still has such a grip on us all these years later.
It really is a puzzle, isn't it?
It is. So picture this September 7th, 1996 Tupac. He's coming from this Mike Tyson fight.
Okay.
He's riding shotgun with Suge Knight, the head honcho of Death Row Records.
Mm-hmm.
And suddenly this white Cadillac pulls up alongside him and shots are fired.
Like right out in the open?
Right out in the open on the Las Vegas Strip. I mean, just crazy. And Tupac is hit 4 times.
4 times. Wow.
Now, the thing is, and this is one of those details that has just gotten people talking forever,
Yeah.
is that Suge Knight, right next to Tupac, he only gets like minor injuries.
That's always been suspicious.
Super suspicious. And people have been asking, you know, was it just dumb luck? Was Suge somehow in on it? I mean, it's fueled so many theories.
It's almost like human nature. You know,
Right.
we see a gap in the story and our brains just try to fill it in with whatever we can.
Right. And we're going to get into some of those theories in a minute.
Okay.
But before we do, let's rewind a little bit earlier that night. Tupac and his entourage, they get into this brawl with a Crip gang member named Orlando Anderson.
Oh, yeah. I remember hearing about that. That was at the MGM Grand, right?
Yeah. Can you give us a little background on the Crips and how this whole fight kind of played into the investigation?
Sure. So the Crips, they're one of the biggest and frankly most notorious street gangs in the U.S., you know, and they go way back to the late 60s in Los Angeles.
Wow.
And they're known for a few things. They're blue colors.
Right.
And unfortunately, a pretty long history of violence and crime. So when this fight with Orlando Anderson happened at the MGM, it put him right at the top of the suspect list.
Makes sense.
Especially with all the tension and rivalry between the East and West Coast rap scenes at the time. It just added fuel to the fire.
Yeah. You've got these two worlds colliding.
Yeah.
And it's a recipe for disaster, it feels like.
Yeah, it's a lot more than just music at this point. It's tied up with gang culture and personal feuds, and it just feels like everything's escalating.
Yeah. So you've got this shooting. It happens to Tupac. He clings to life for 6 days
Yeah.
and then tragically passes away at just 25 years old.
Way too young.
Way too young. And Anderson, even though he always denied having anything to do with the shooting, he ends up getting killed in an unrelated shooting just a couple years later.
Oh, wow. So another unsolved case on top of everything else.
Right. Another wrinkle in this whole thing.
Yeah, and probably fueled even more of the conspiracy theories floating around.
Oh, for sure. Think about it. You've got this high-profile murder.
Right.
The prime suspect is dead. There's no clear answers. It's like the perfect storm for speculation and conspiracy theories.
And don't forget, the whole backdrop of this East Coast, West Coast rivalry, it's like this Shakespearean drama playing out in real life.
Totally. And then, you know, on top of all of that, you have the murder of Biggie Smalls just 6 months after Tupac.
Ugh, that's right. It's like a 1-2 punch that just shook the music world.
It's hard to even grasp the magnitude of both of their losses, you know?
Yeah, they were both so talented and so influential. Their music touched so many people, and it's just tragic that their lives were cut short like that.
So fast forward a bunch of years, and this guy named Dwayne Keith Davis comes onto the scene. Now, he also goes by Keith D,
Keith D, okay.
and he's a Crip, and he's Orlando Anderson's uncle.
Oh, wow. So he's right in the thick of it.
And here's where it gets really interesting. He confesses
To what?
to being in the car during the shooting.
No way.
And he claims that Orlando Anderson was the one who pulled the trigger.
So after all this time, we finally have an answer.
You'd think, right, but it's not that simple.
Of course not. It's never that simple.
For one thing, why would he wait so long to come forward?
Yeah, what's his motivation? What's he getting out of it?
Exactly. And on top of that, even with this confession, the authorities, they don't make any arrests for years.
Years. So they didn't really believe him or what?
I mean, they must have their reasons right.
I guess so, but it just adds another layer to this whole mystery.
It really does. And then hold on, because it gets even wilder. September 2023, Keith D is arrested for Tupac's murder.
Whoa, hold on. So all these years later, they finally arrest him based on what, though?
Well, that's the crazy part. It seems like the evidence against him is mostly based on his own words, his own statements over the years.
That's wild. So his confession might actually come back to bite him.
Right, and it just goes to show that even though we might think we're getting close to the truth with this case,
Right.
there are still so many questions.
So many unanswered questions.
And probably always will be.
You know, it makes you wonder, what is it about this story, this whole Tupac thing that keeps drawing us in after all these years?
Yeah, I mean, is it the unsolved mystery? Is it the music? Is it something else entirely?
It's got to be more than just a whodunit, you know? I think it speaks to this, like, deep-seated need we all have to understand things.
To make sense of the chaos.
Exactly, especially when something so senseless happens, you know? We want to find meaning. We want to find someone to blame. We want to find closure.
And sometimes we just can't.
I mean, sometimes we just can't. And I think that's what makes Tupac's story so powerful. It's a constant reminder that some things just defy easy answers.
It really is. And as we wrap up this deep dive, here's something I want you all to think about.
Okay.
Why are we still so captivated by this case? What is it about fame and tragedy and the search for justice that keeps us coming back for more?
Good question.
And what does it say about us and our culture that almost 30 years later, we're still searching for those answers?
It's definitely something to think about.
It is, and with that, we're going to leave you to ponder that very question.
Until next time.
Until next time.